It's a media obsession. I blame the media. That was Paul Finebaum commenting with Stephen A. Smith about why we, I guess in the media, talk about people like the Cowboys and Notre Dame more than teams that actually win, like in his example, Georgia or USC. Someone said USC. Stephen A. Smith brought up Georgia. And what I would say is this is kind of nuanced, but I do have a lot to say about this. First of all, uh, Georgia gets talked about a lot, and they should be getting talked about a lot. Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama. These are the four premier programs in college football, probably over the last 8 years, maybe 7 years, generally speaking. I mean, Ohio State's gone on and played for a national championship once in that time. Georgia's played for it 3 times. Alabama's played for it three times. Someone can correct me on that. Might be more than that for Bama. And of course, Michigan's played for it once and won it once. Georgia with 2, Bama with, in the time I'm talking about, 2. So why do we still talk about Notre Dame? Well, some of us don't, because Notre Dame doesn't matter. Notre Dame is about like when LSU is pretty good but not great, or about like the Gators when they're really good but not great. I think there's no one who's younger than 40 thinks about Notre Dame at all. They just don't. Now, the numbers, reality, and fact back up what I'm talking about here as it relates to who are the biggest brands. The biggest brands in college football this past season, regular season, were Alabama, 74 million viewers. That's not on all 12 games being broadcast. These numbers are not apples to apples. They are just apples to apples and a little bit of the apple being cut off. Alabama and Georgia did not play all their games on television that were broadcast in a way that could be rated. Michigan and Ohio State essentially did. Michigan, 67 million. Ohio State, 66 million. Georgia, 65 million. I mean, I've not completed this, but no one else is in the 60 million range or above. And as I've discussed a lot, Alabama's at 74 million in the regular season. I mean, like their game against Notre Dame's game against Tennessee State was on television. 1 million and a little bit of people watched that. How many people watched Notre Dame this past year? 38.5 million people. I mean, that's certainly not nothing, right? That's lower than Texas, Colorado, Penn State. It's about like USC and LSU. Was LSU a big deal this year? I mean, I'm not like making fun of LSU. I'm not talking junk or anything. Was LSU a big deal this year? Were they Joe Burrow? No, they were not Joe Burrow. This is not a media obsession. People really don't talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame has to be included because they are not irrelevant. They are like an SEC team that's not a national championship caliber team, but still has a brand name. Michigan had not won the national championship, the undisputed national championship, in decades. And we still talked about Michigan constantly. They won a share of it in 1997 with Nebraska. It had been since I think the 60s or 50s that they won it before that. So, and yet we talk about them constantly. Ohio State, I mean, this is not the same thing. They've not won a national championship since 2014. The Gators haven't won it since 2008. Tennessee hasn't since 1998. The media obsession, I blame the media, and I enjoyed this the entire season myself personally, is Colorado. I mean, Colorado is the media obsession, and it's everyone's obsession. 54 million people watched Colorado play football this year. They were not past 6 million a year ago. So there are media obsessions. There are obsessions. Colorado, of course, if Deion were not there, no one would be talking about them. He is the reason for and I don't mean this in a bad way, the spectacle. But, Notre Dame in the grand scheme of things Notre Dame is not Georgia, is not Alabama, is not Ohio State, is not Michigan. Now, one of the reasons why Ohio State's numbers are high this year, if you want to call it high, is because they played Ohio State at home against Ohio State. I'll look the number up. That was a really big deal game. in terms of broadcasting for both teams. But Ohio State always has the Michigan game. Always has the Michigan game. So that's just not that big of a deal for them. They're always going to play in really huge games at the end of the year. The Ohio State the Ohio State Notre Dame game was 9.8 million people watched that game. 9.8 million people. That is a tremendous amount of people that watched that game. 19 million watched Ohio State, Michigan. Okay. Let's see. Alabama, Georgia was. Apologies. This takes a second or two to get through. I have all the games. Alabama, Georgia was 17.5 million people. When Georgia and Bama play, they are the most watched game on average the last 12 years. Now, they don't play every year, but they might start. That might start. We'll see. So I disagree in terms of nuance with what Paul is saying. It is a media obsession. I blame the media. What is the media? I mean, are we only talking about ESPN, or are we talking about everybody? Because I don't think everybody is watching, and I don't think everybody's writing about Notre Dame. I can't remember the last time I wrote about Notre Dame. I can't remember, with the exception of that when I'm talking about Stephen A. Smith, the last time I talked about Notre Dame. I mean, I've been up there, man. It's really the stadium, the campus. The stadium is very nice. It's old, but it's got gold handles. Like the door handles, they're all gold. I mean, they do an amazing job of reinforcing what they are. They feel like they're elite. They feel like they're obviously a faith-based institution, a Catholic school that has all of the accoutrements that go along with being an elite private school. And they're, that's all there for Notre Dame. But I don't think that I'm not sure I agree that it's a media obsession. We talk about Georgia a ton. I mean, if you go to ESPN, they're far more likely to talk about Georgia and Bama and Ohio State and Michigan than they are any other four teams. I mean, you pick any other four teams out of a hat. Texas. I mean, it comes to mind USC, Penn State, and I guess LSU. I don't know, maybe LSU, UW, or Oregon. But they don't, I mean, there's a whole program that's essentially catered to, we're going to talk about Alabama, or people that play Alabama, which is the Paul Finebaum show. I mean, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. That's basically what it is. It's evolved from that. It's much more about the SEC than it once was. But no doubt, what stirs the merry-go-round there, what turns the merry-go-round is Alabama and Alabama talk and Nick Saban talk. And it's been like that forever with Paul Finebaum's show. Nobody's talking about Notre Dame unless something pops up. There's no reason to talk about Notre Dame. And I mean, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way either. What have they done? Here are some numbers that are curious, okay? Do y'all remember when Clemson was an elite football program? You know how many people watched Clemson total this past year? I'll leave that till the end. Do you know how many watched Auburn? How many people watched Auburn play a football game this past year? I have the answer. 25 million. Do you know how many million of those 25 million were either the Georgia or the Alabama game? 15 million. 15.495 million people that watched Auburn because of who they were playing. The other games for the Auburn Tigers, the other 10 million viewers, were just a scattering of their other games. Ole Miss, 1.8 million. UMass, 1 million. I mean, a lot of these teams, Oklahoma, 29 million people. USC, 34 million. LSU, 34 million. Notre Dame, 38.5. Texas, 51.1. Now, why was Texas higher? Part of that was because they played in the Big 12 championship game. Colorado, 54 million people. The obsession of the media. First of all, media criticism is so often usually poorly crafted and not well done, and almost always politically motivated. Okay, so that gets tiring. What would be better is to say this is a real problem in the media. the real problem in college football media is too many homers cover teams. You want to get down to it? Too many people that are either supporters of a team or a program or went to that school or whatever cover that school. There's way too much of that. That's what college football media has become. It's not good. It's not good. You want to have a real discussion about what's wrong with media. There's not enough reporting. There's too much of what I'm doing right now, which is opinioning. We've gotten away from what was productive and wholesome in the past to what is today, which is far more click based and so forth. And everybody at ESPN participates in that as well. They're doing that because it works. I mean, Pat McAfee is on ESPN talking about the Cowboys and the NFL because people care. They watch it. They will watch you talk about the Yankees far quicker than they will watch you talk about the Kansas City Royals. No one cares about the Kansas City Royals. No one. People in Tampa don't care about the Tampa Bay Blu-rays or whatever the world they're called. No one cares. They just don't care. And, if that's what is a, quote, media obsession, I think that's the wrong way to put it. What I would say is that's the media reality of today. And, that's just what it is. And the fact of the matter is that these are brands. Whatever a franchise is a brand. College football teams are brands. Kirby Smart's a brand. Kalen DeBoer is a brand. Notre Dame is certainly a brand. But I don't think we talk about Notre Dame necessarily more. I watch a fair amount of ESPN. I don't even think that they talk about it. I think they over talk about the Cowboys for sure. I think they over talk about the Lakers for sure. But at the same time, this is show business, man. This isn't media. ESPN is an entertainment company. That's what the E in ESPN stands for. So this is about entertainment. A lot of people don't like Pat McAfee for whatever reason. Well, I mean, okay, but his show is well watched for what it is. I mean, that's all there is to it. That sort of barstool style sports, that sells to folks. If people want me to sit here and talk X's and O's, I'm not qualified to do that. And frankly, anybody who's on a TV screen, they're not either. Almost always. They're just not qualified to do it. Reporters are reporters. They're not there to talk about X's and O's. Vast majority of people didn't even play it in high school. So that's just not where we should be focused. But talking about Notre Dame doesn't matter. When they matter, it will be worth it to talk about them. But the vast majority of the time that I watch, that network, they are talking about the NFL. Very specifically, they are usually talking about quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's just what it is. That's how it goes. I don't hate them for it, but it's not a media obsession. And scoring layups, trashing the media, that's fine. I mean, I have plenty of issues with people that are in this industry. There's a lot of people that have no business doing this. They're not qualified. They have no experience. They're idiots. There's a lot of that going on. So, but I don't find it at all a media obsession. The Cowboys, the Lakers, that discussion. I mean, we don't need to talk about Dak Prescott nearly as much as we need to talk about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a freaking star. Dak Prescott's really good quarterback, and that's it. He just happens to play for the Cowboys. Could you possibly imagine if Joe Burrow played for the Cowboys or Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback probably this century? Yeah, I said it. Played for the Cowboys. It would be nonstop. But scoring layups with your audience. I mean, we got to tell people the truth. And the truth is, we don't talk about Notre Dame that much. We just don't. But they don't deserve to be talked about either. The numbers speak for themselves. If you want to talk about stuff, and this is what we talk about on here. I'm not talking about Oklahoma. I mean, I'll talk about Oklahoma once a month. I'm not talking about Auburn more than once a month because people don't care. They want to talk about Georgia, Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, and not in that order. It's Georgia, Georgia, hating Alabama, which is, I don't know, whatever, that's their deal. And then Michigan, Ohio State, the Gators. I mean, no one's going to talk about Colorado now. We're going to see people will watch them and then perhaps, but ESPN knows exactly what they're doing. There are metrics. You can watch these things. I mean, everybody knows what they're doing. This isn't like the old days where you would, write something, report something, and then the next day it went in the newspaper and you had no idea what was going on, or a television station where you can't track things. We know exactly what's going on. That's a media obsession. You want to blame the media for something? That part of our profession is not always so good. And everybody at ESPN in Bristol and Charlotte knows that.